Well, thank you, Rashid, for inviting and hosting me. It's good to be back in the Rumi Forum after about 2 or 3 years. And thank you very much for this very warm and icy welcome, for this formidable snowstorm, which we also had last night when I left Frankfurt. And maybe even behind the snowstorm, the White House is disappearing. But I tell you, forget about the White House, because Turkey has a white palace. And this white palace is 6 times as big as the White House, has 50 times the floor space, and the Central Command Center is a copy of what is in the White House. So no other ruler worldwide has rules from such a big complex as President Erdogan does. So the question is, well, what Turkey is that? What person is Erdogan? Is he overstretching? What kind of new Turkey is he creating? So in Turkey, everything is about black and white. It's nothing about colors. It's white. Turkey has the white palace. The party, the AK Party, is an acronym for Adalet ve Kalkınma, for justice and development, but stands also for white pure party. And historically, there is a division in the Turkish society between white Turks and black Turks. The white Turks historically had been the educated, Western-educated, secular upper class in Istanbul and Ankara, multilingual, affluent, and looking down to the black Turks living in Anatolia, being pious, being uneducated, being poor. So the AK Party, the White Party, is in power since 2002. And the main thing it did was to bring about a change in the elite. The elite of the white Turks was replaced by the black Turks, by these Anatolian Turks. And AK Party is the political arm of that, and Erdogan is the political leader. And so to add insult to injury, nothing is left to the white Turks. Even the elite is now the black Turks. They have the white palace, they have the white party, and they have the elite. So I would like just to give brief introduction, maybe 10 minutes or so, what went wrong in old Turkey. Well, how had been the golden decade of the first years of AK Party, and what that goes wrong nowadays with Erdogan's party. The transition from the Ottoman Empire to the Turkish Republic had been very painful. We all know that, because there was a state without a nation. And the Republic was there in 1923 and had to create its own nation. And it did so by defining 6 principles, the so-called Altı Ok, the six arrows. And these 6 arrows have been a history of conflicts. They had been a history of those who had been excluded and challenging these principles. The principles had been Turkish nationalism, milliyetçilik. It excluded the Kurds. The principle had been laicism, excluded the pious Muslims. It had been the illusion of an homogeneous society, excluding, denying all classes, while challenging the leftists. There had been the principle that the state is commanding the economy, that excluded the capitalists. So the only thing which was not challenged was republicanism, to milliyetçilik, and the principle of the constant revolutionary transformation, devrimcilik, became obsolete because it was Kemalism was very soon a stagnant dogma. The 2 most important principles had been laicism and nationalism. I just would like to focus a minute on what is the problem with laicism. Laicism is not secularism. Laicism did not introduce the separation of state and religion, and it did not guarantee the neutrality of the state towards the religion. Rather, it empowered the state to control the religion and to break the power of the Islamic clergy. And that all was the product of the positivist mindset of the early 20th century. So this state created a supreme religious authority called Diyanet with two functions. One function was to control Islam by educating imams and deploying imams. And in fact, we had a freedom of belief, but not a freedom of religion. And for example, non-Muslim minorities did not have a right to establish themselves as, for example, in a church. And the second task of the Diyanet was to shape the Turkish nation, because after the First World War, there were a variety of ethnicities all over Anatolia, and how to shape this nation. And Ataturk said every Muslim is a Turk. And so you have to bring about a homogeneous Islam in order to shape a homogeneous Turkish nation. And that was the task of this Diyanet. And therefore you could not say that this is a secular system. It is a system that the state produces its own version of Islam. And so even this, it was bizarre that this a state had a state religion, Sunni Islam. So this was the ideology, and we had four pillars to implement this ideology. The military, which intervened 4 times. The judiciary, which forbid more parties than any other country in Europe. And the bureaucracy, which watered down any initiatives, any reforms by the parliament. So if anything went wrong, if the society became too free, then these pillars intervened. So, well, we have seen old Turkey failed. The ideology was outdated. The internal conflicts could not be controlled any longer, and the economy was a disaster. And in 2001, 2003, Turkey was very close to bankruptcy, and that was a reset. That was a total reset of modern Turkey and the beginning of new Turkey. AK Party won the election. We know that in November 2003. It's governing since then. Continued the economic reforms and started also political reforms, which brought Turkey close to the European Union. And the European Union started in 2005 negotiation process with Turkey. So growth created a middle class. In the first decade of the AK Party rule, per capita income tripled. And these political reforms created a new civil society. These first years had been a success story. More people than ever benefited in the political process. More people than ever benefited from growth. A new middle class emerged, the Anatolian middle class, which was hungry for education, which was hungry for economic success, and a lot was invested for the first time in education, in health system. And then the reform slowed down, starting maybe 2007. Well, there was the electronic memorandum by the army, which I'm sorry. I lost my mic.
Sorry, yours is this one. Maybe it's off or something. Oh, it seems to be on. Yeah. Maybe battery. No, it's on. Continue. Yeah, please continue. Sorry.
Can I continue?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2007, we had 2 events which are the beginning of the slowdown of the political reforms. One is the electronic memorandum. The last time the military wanted to intervene, and it failed. Since then, the military sidelined. And in the same years, the Constitutional Court had to follow up a case to forbid the ruling AK Party, and that was prevented only by a majority 5 to 4 votes. And from then on, the leadership of the AK Party went really hard on their internal adversaries, and that became worse after the election of 2011, which Erdogan won by about 50%. From then on, he started to eliminate his opponents. Well, the military was sidelines. In the judiciary, he had replaced judges by his own judges, and also the bureaucracy was being replaced by his own men. The first big challenge was the Gezi Park protests in summer 2013, where the young population who had been disappointed by the slowing down of the political reforms started to protest. The critical mass was not sufficient to bring about a restart of the reforms. Just the contrary, Erdogan called them thugs. He told them, "Know your limits, Haddini Bill," and he blamed the Lufthansa, the American ambassador, Israel, Fethullah Gulen, for these protests. And then after that, he started to persecute the Hizmet movement. And well, you had some indications in the past years when he, for example, shut down the preparatory school of the Gulen movement, but it really became hard in December 2013 when corruption charges were brought against more than 40 leading politicians and businessmen, all linked to then Prime Minister Erdogan, and they were charged of taking bribes, of rigging state tenders. Erdogan shot back and said, well, this is a parallel state, being located with networks in the judiciary, in the bureaucracy, in the police, trying to overthrow him. A witch hunt began. He escalated his hate speech. More than 3,000 police officers had been dismissed without any legal basis. More than 100 judges and prosecutors had also been dismissed, and the Minister of Justice started to interfere into the processes. He appointed judges and judges close to the government who could stop all these corruption, who did stop the corruption investigations. What does that tell us? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Erdogan has started as a clean politician, absolutely. I've interviewed him quite often. In the beginning, he was rather modest. He took advice. Today, he is not available to any kind of advice. And the old patterns of old Turkey re-emerged. Only businessmen close to the elite do get contracts, do win tenders. And so a new oligarchy close to Erdogan is now governing the country, and the other is silence, be it in society, being in media, be it in politics. So this new Turkey had been more democratic for a couple of years. Now we are back to square one. Some more remarks to foreign policy and economic policy. In foreign policy, in the Kemalist era, the foreign policy was oriented towards status quo. Keep the status quo, don't do any changes. So then Özal, in the 80s and early 90s, started a diplomacy for Turkey as a trade nation. Diplomacy had to flank business. And in the past 10 years, Erdogan and his former foreign minister, now prime minister, has started a very assertive foreign policy, thinking, well, Turkey is a soft power in the region, could be a Sunni leading power to shape the region. But the leverage, as it has shown, is not enough to change the region. And the second mistake was that that Erdogan and Davutoglu thought Europe is relegated, and there is a rise of Asian powers where economic success is linked with authoritarianism. And so that was he was getting farther and farther away from the European path he did in the first years. Davutoglu claimed to have a zero problem foreign policy with the neighbors, and it ended up with zero neighbors. And the biggest blunder was Syria. We certainly could talk later on where the spillover effects are felt more and more. Problems loom also for the economy. Turkey is in the middle income trap. It was very fast to come from a low income country to a middle income country, but to get from the middle income country to high income, Turkey needs especially institutional reforms, and I do not see that. Will Erdogan change again? I see 4 different phases of Erdogan in the past years. Erdogan, before he was a mayor, he was hardcore Islamist, believing in Sharia, believing in everything what hardcore Islamists believe in. As a mayor, starting from 1994, he became very pragmatic. Istanbul did not get Islamic during his 4 years as a mayor. It became a vibrant, cosmopolitan metropolis. The third era was Erdogan as a reformer from 2003 to 2007. And since then, he's becoming more and more authoritarian. I think there might be an Erdogan 5 because Erdogan does not have an ideology. Erdogan is a shrewd politician, orienting himself to the circumstances he finds and then making the best out of it. So I think that he might change again. 2 weeks ago, I had an interview with Ahmet Davutoglu, the Prime Minister of Turkey, and of course he denied everything. There is no slowdown of reforms. There are more rights for the Kurdish minority. There are more rights for the non-Muslim minorities. And he accused heavily the Hizmet movement for having created a parallel structure in the state, and denied also any kind of public corruption cases. Erdogan is from, Davutoglu is from Konya, and that's not far away from Akşehir here, and this place where the wise man Nasreddin Hoxha came from, to whom we owe so many funny stories explaining a lot of life. For example, once Nasreddin was asked, well, why do people, when they leave in the morning, go to direct to different directions? And the Hoxha answered, well, if all would go to the same direction, that would throw off the balance of the world. I think Turkey is now off this balance because everybody is forced to go the way of Erdogan, and I hope that this off the balance situation will be corrected soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So we have time for your questions. I apologize for the mic situation, but please go ahead, sir. You could also mention your name and affiliation.
Mic or not a mic?
There's no mic for the
mic.
audience.
Vielen Dank. Thank you very much.
Bitte schön.
Very, very interesting breakdown of Erdogan. When I hear you talking, arrest of journalists, emasculating the judiciary, reducing the power of the army, basically banning other parties though, I'm reminded that today is the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. And there was somebody 10 years, 12 years before that who said very similar things to this man, very similar. And I've called him that. I won't call him here, everybody knows what I'm talking about. Do you see that? And the second question I have, you talked about the change in Anatolia. We see a very sharp decline in fertility in Turkey. I think it's a question of literacy. If women are literate, they have fewer children. And I think the Turkish fertility right now is down to 1.7 or 1.8, something very low. So the population will decline. This will have tremendous economic things. The other thing is, if you discuss for a moment, and I knew it from everyone before, there's a very sharp anti-Semitic position, very sharp anti-Israeli position, seems like against America, and all of a sudden this megalomaniac that Muslims discovered America and a number of other ridiculous things. Is this guy talking with a sound mind? You know him, or is he completely meshuggah, as I call him? Thank you.
Well, starting with the last one, I don't think he is he's meshuggah. He just lost the touch to the earth. He's spoiled by too much success, and nobody reaches him. Well, I don't want to say I know him well. I've interviewed him quite often, and I follow him practically since '91, since '92. The success he had in the past 10 years makes him think, well, he can do everything. And that's the reason why, he's living in the parallel world. There is no parallel state. He's living in the parallel world, I would say. On the fertility decline, this is urbanization. Turkey is now is a highly urbanized country with about 70% of the population living in what is considered to be cities, and that dropped the fertility incredibly. And it's also the rise of of Anatolia, and the rise of this Anatolian middle class. Turkey is not anymore a poor house staying in front of Europe and threatening to flood Europe with millions of migrants. And then the first question, I think, if I understood it right, the success of Erdogan is economics, the tripling of the per capita income after decades of stagnation, after decades of incredible corruption, after decades of incredible economic plunder. And so, his luck will stop when the growth rates will flatten, and this will come automatically because Turkey is in the middle of the middle income trap. And they do not they do not what is necessary, to keep growth rates high. And therefore, I think this is the biggest threat he sees, and maybe he sees it, and therefore he's so stubborn on persecuting everyone who is considered to be opposition.
Ma'am, please.
My name is Ilhan. I work for the Muslim Public Affairs Council, and I'm interested. Thank you for your presentation. I'm interested in your views in 3 areas. So one of the things that people said when I was in Turkey right before the elections was, "Are you going to vote for the man, or are you going to vote for the party?" So I didn't even understand at the time, like, what are you talking about? Well, I think what they were saying is that there is no viable alternative in terms of a party, and we're voting for the AK party, not for Erdogan. So I'd like your views on that. The second thing is, what happened to these, parlak insanlar that were in part of the AK party? These shining stars that, like Abdullah Gül, like, what happened to him? How come he's so silent? I mean, why has he taken this back seat? And the third point, I'm sorry I'm asking so many questions, is I noticed that they don't touch the things that line their pockets. So, for example, Ali Babacan stayed Minister of Finance. There's a lot of reshuffling in political arena, but in terms of the economic arena, anything that's going to mess the economy, they're saying, no, that's something we're not going to touch because that's doing, that's helping us and that's helping Turkey in general. So I'd like your views on those things.
Well, obviously, Erdogan has a higher popularity than the AK party. This is my reading, because people, if you go to, let's say, neighborhoods that had been poor, like Kasım Pasha. I just lived in Beyoğlu in Istanbul, and so I went very, very often down to Kasım Pasha and speaking to people there. People identify their economic well-being with Erdogan. Erdogan is a symbol of an economically powerful Turkey, and of a Turkey which is assertive in the world. So the question is rather, will AK party survive without Erdogan? Erdogan sees this threat, and therefore he says, well, according to the constitution, I'm not supposed to continue party politics, but of course he is still leader of the AK party, and in circumventing the constitution, he's still having the weekly cabinet meeting, and poor Prime Minister Ahmed Erdogan is sitting next to him. So he does business as usual, because he knows the AK party would fall apart into different factions if he would not keep it together as an umbrella. Why Abdullah Gül keeps so silent? Well, because he just does not have the charisma of Tayyip Erdogan. I have witnessed Tayyip Erdogan once when he was giving a campaign speech to an incredible 1 million people in Istanbul. 1 million people, entertaining them for 2 hours. I've sit together several times with Mr. Gül, and Mr. Gül is very intelligent and much more intellectual than Tayyip Erdogan is, but he's not someone who can entertain 1 million people for 2 hours. So, well, he does not have, let's say, this powerful background as a politician. I think he's just waiting for his chance, because he knows if he challenges Erdogan, and Erdogan is so shrewd as a politician, he would lose. He must wait for a chance to challenge him, and there are many scenarios. Well, whether he will found a new party, or whether he will wait until the AK party breaks apart. But he waits for his chance. And third one, Ali Babacan is the only person the business community has confidence in. And the question is, if the statute of the AK party will be applied for the upcoming parliamentary elections, he might not be able to run again, and that would be a disaster for the business community, because, well, whether he has the economic portfolio or the finance portfolio, he is the symbol of a good economic policy, because Tayyip Erdogan doesn't understand of politics. He understands how to fill his pocket, but he doesn't understand well how to have a good budget, or to do structural reforms.
Any more questions? Yes, Laura, please.
I don't know really how to phrase this question, but I'm getting at the who is the real opposition? I mean, you always hear everyone. It's always Hizmet. Okay, so if it's only Hizmet, then I just think, well, what opportunity do the Turks have to? It's either you're in that camp against him, or you're what. So I guess my question is, what is the what? What is the unknown, the question mark? This group. Is there any other opportunity or any other opposition group besides Hizmet?
Well, Turkey is a highly polarized country, 50% with Erdogan, 50% against Erdogan. And those 50% with Erdogan are rather homogeneous, compared with the 50% against Erdogan, which is highly fragmented. And until recently, you could argue, well, Hizmet is the last corrective force, in the biggest corrective force in this fragmented opposition group. But there is much more. For example, I was amazed how frank the chairman of TÜSAT, Haluk Dinçer, spoke out recently in a public speech, declaring there is no such things as a parallel state, and I want the investigation against this corruption going on. And that infuriated Erdogan, and he again addressed TÜSAT and Haluk Dinçer in another hate speech. So, well, the business community is somehow alarmed, because they know this is not the path they need in order to continue this golden decade. It's part of the business community, and then I'm living in Frankfurt. And of course, I'm in contact with with many people from the Hizmet movement and from also the Turkish community. And for the first time ever, I see since a couple of months, there is some sort of, let's say, for the first time, a common understanding between Hizmet movement, some members of CHP, and the Alevis. They never spoke together before. And they are speaking together in Germany, they are sitting together, and I wonder whether that might also happen in Turkey. Because, of course, everybody is a victim of Erdogan. The CHP, MHP, the Alevis, and the Kurds, by the way, it's just interesting, they are in between. They are let's say, the tipping point, and therefore, Erdogan wants to get their support for the upcoming parliamentary election in order to have an absolute majority. And this is the reason why he still pretends that the peace process is going on. It's not progressing really anymore, but he wants to have the PKK and the Kurds on their side. But it's interesting that besides, for example, the PKK did not participate in the Gezi protests, and they kept relatively silent recently for domestic Turkish issues. But well, what I see an interesting sign is that CHP, MHP, Alevi, and Hizmet are talking together, and I hear there are also some contacts for the first time ever in Turkey. But then be aware. Well, you can silence print media, but you cannot silence the social media. And 70 journalists are presently detained in Turkey because they have reported on the corruption investigation. And one colleague was detained because she sent a tweet complaining that this reporting is oppressed. But this is the place where the opposition comes from, and I've said before that the Gezi protests did not have the critical mass. That does not mean that the next time they might have the critical mass.
Don Wallace.
Don Wallace, professor at law school. The fragmented 50% opposition. Do you see any outstanding personality on the horizon who can mobilize it?
That's just the main problem. There is no charismatic leader to challenge Erdogan. And when you have interviewed him and followed him for many years, you know how charismatic he is. And this was good for Turkey for a couple of years, but now it has become a liability and a threat. But I don't see anyone, no.
I'm Sam Sedenade. I'm U.S. representative of Somali Media Group, and it was a good speech for beginning all day KP till today. And how describe the Turkey regime now? Is that a republic or democracy or dictatorship? How are you describing that? Because you know Syria was a republic and Iran now a republic, and how is describe it? And again, you're a journalist, big journalist, and now it seems Erdogan trying to silence the opposition media of Turkey now. And for example, Samayo Media Group CEO is in jail now just for a scenario of the fictional drama. What do you think about that?
Well, Turkey is definitely not a dictatorship, and the Turkish Republic you cannot compare to the Syrian Republic, because in Syria these institutions had just been a facade for a complete different reality behind it. Turkey is a functioning state. Turkey is a republic. Turkey is a democracy, but with increasing authoritarian tendencies. There are still elections, and the elections are free and fair. It is the lack of the opposition that they do not win more votes. So it is mainly it is a one-man show. It is a one-man party, and everything is like a pyramid linked to that. And in that way, Turkey reminds me of, let's say, Oriental states. It's becoming more, let's say, clientelistic. Clientelistic relations are becoming more important, and this was the problem why we had the Arab Spring in 2011, because there was a breakup between the elite benefiting from the state and the society not having any, let's say, benefit, economic or political benefit, and in 2011, well, this contradiction just broke up, and in Turkey we just have a tendency towards more authoritarian tendency. Well, there are elections, there are checks and balances, they are eroding, however. There is a civil society, and also the civil society is eroding, but we still have it, and we should work for, let's say, improving the civil society. And the second question, I'm sorry?
Freedom of press and
Freedom of press. Well, why silencing the media? Well, the war broke open in December when these leading journalists had been detained, and that was the war declared open towards the Hizmet movement, and that was mainly to divert attention from the fact that there are ongoing investigation on corruption linked directly to the president. It was also to justify these draconic measures to reduce the independence of the judiciary, to that the government is appointing judges. So, well, if you have an enemy, you can identify that clearly, then it's easier, well, to have such draconic measures which you would never be able to implement in an ordinary situation.
Any more questions? Yes, please.
Would you discuss for a moment U.S.-Turkish relations, as well as the situation regarding ISIS and accusation of Turkey of allowing terrorists to cross borders? And generally, the situation, as far as I can tell, is a big mess now. Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, the United States had been for many decades been in favor that Turkey becomes a member of the European Union, because that keeps Turkey in the Atlantic community and makes it the model partner the U.S. administrations needed for the Middle East. And Turkey for many years had been, let's say, the hope for to prove that democracy and Islam are compatible. So let's say to export this model. And now Turkey, in this sense, today is a disappointment, because, well, Turkey is conducting a foreign policy as a lone wolf. They don't coordinate their policy with the European Union or with the US or with NATO. They ask for help from NATO, but in the opposite, they are not a constructive partner in this mess. They have even increased the mess, because instead of closing the border, they kept it open, because, well, we have the records that only via Turkey these jihadists, be it from Europe or from Northern Africa, could have gone to Syria. And there are documented cases where most probably the Turkish intelligence MIT has sent weapons and other equipment to either the Nusra Front or to other Islamist organizations, such as the Islamic State or ISIS-Daesh. And it's only very recently that Turkey became aware that the spillover might be a catastrophe for Turkey if that situation continues, because, well, you have 1.8 million refugees, 1.8 million refugees from Syria being on Turkish soil. Most of them don't want to return. So, well, you have problems in society and economy, but you have also problems in security, because how many sleeping cells are there? adding up to that, this I need to explain a bit. In the ideology of the Islamic State, the small city of Darbik is very important. Darbik is a city very close to Aleppo, and there is a hadith to the Prophet Muhammad that in Darbik there will be the big battle between, as he says, the Muslims and the West, or Rome, as he says at that time. And that will be the beginning of the end of the time. And therefore the name of their magazine is Darbik. And it's available in internet. Everybody can read. And it's also available in many languages besides Arabic. Darbik, D-A-B-I-Q. And now the striking point is that according to this, let's say, prophecy, after Darbik, the next battle will be in Rome. Rome at that time was Constantinople, today Istanbul. That's an incredible threat. Why Turkey is not talking about that? I would fight ISIS and not support it.
Yeah, I'm more than puzzled as to the situation between Turkey and Syria, and how, I don't know when the last time you were on the ground in Turkey, but what is the sense from people there as the conflict increases, as it continues to go on, as more journalists from other countries are being beheaded, and news reports from around the world, not necessarily coming out of Turkey, reporting that these people are getting in and out of borders along the Turkish border in Syria. And then a story that I just saw yesterday, I just was trying to look up the gentleman's name. The guy who, the twins were from Europe, went over, do you know what I'm talking about, to meet some ISIL guys to get married. They're in the central part of the state, and this guy, their parents asked him to go and find them, and he was kidnapped, and now he's one of the only people that they've ever, that's been released, that hasn't been killed while he's been held captive. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Richard Engels, the one who reported, yeah. So he was in and came out and is reporting about how he was beaten, all of these things that happened to him. I think he was there for 3 months. So he's recounting about all of this, and everybody knows, he said, I went in through Turkey, I came in through Turkey, it was so easy, and now he's hiding out there because he's wanted by ISIS and over in Europe as well. So what is the sense of Turks of this danger that is imposed upon them, and that they feel that they're living in fear and threatened every single day?
Well, the situation is very tense along the border because there are all these refugees, and there are all these people hiding, coming from the Nusra Front, from the Islamic State, being treated in hospital, having a refuge. We also have stories from German jihadists who fight in Syria and then they come back over the, for example, the so-called Dienstlag in the cell, a group of 7 young German jihadists, and then they come back to Turkey just to have some, and also their families are living on the Turkish side. The problem is Erdogan's wrong priorities. Erdogan's priority is Assad has to fall, and then we talk about Daesh, about ISIS. And this is the main point, disconnect between the West and Turkey, because we say Assad is not a threat to us, but the Islamic State is a threat to us. But Erdogan put all his political capital in the fall of Assad. He invested all that capital. And now Assad is still there. Assad is going to stay, not for all of Syria, but for a reduced Syria, just let's say from Damascus to Aleppo. But he's going to stay there as a president, not today Syria. And so Erdogan is a loser. And Erdogan is used to win. No, he's upset. And he says, no, this guy has to fall. And therefore Turkey insisted too long on a wrong policy and has to pay a high price for that. for example, the border is the problem. We had this big terror attack in Paris, January 7. The day before was a terror attack in Turkey. The Turkish government first claimed that was a leftist organization having committed the terror attack, and later on we found out, no, it was done by a woman connected to ISIS, and the wife, Hayat Boumediene, the wife of one of the 3 attackers in Paris, left Paris at the beginning of January and stayed in a hotel in Istanbul together with this Chechen a woman who committed the suicide attack on January 6. And then she went on to Syria. And so we see how things are getting more and more interconnected, and how Turkey is becoming a target of this group. And but Turkey is waking up, but it's too late. I won't say it's too late, but it's very late.
Okay, thank you for joining us. This is the end of programming. Rainer will be available for more talk. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.